Hello, welcome to RSBN Live. Good afternoon on the East Coast. Good morning on the West Coast. President Trump is en route to The Hague, Netherlands. He will meet with royalty overseas, the King and the Queen of Netherlands, as well as NATO. Looking forward to all of those details coming out, as it's been an amazing breaking news coverage over the last few hours, last few days. President Trump was clearly irritated this morning with Israel striking Iran after the ceasefire took place. Now, he's very happy post-press gaggle that Israel called back its planes. But as House Speaker Mike Johnson put it today in the House Republican press conference, we're dealing with a situation here, Iran, that has been extraordinarily unfaithful and untruthful time and again over the course of really the last half century dealing with foreign affairs, especially their conduct throughout the Middle East. Again, these are people who have called for their leadership, specifically the Ayatollah, the mullahs, that death to Israel, death to the great Satan, otherwise known as America. It was done in front of the United Nations when George W. Bush was president. You can remember their psychotic theocratic mentality of either you follow Shia Islam or you die. That's the mentality of the leadership there. And we know of the Persian culture, of the Persian people. President Trump speaking on this specifically, that they're great traders. They have a ton of oil underneath them. They don't need nuclear weapons, and they will be thriving without such because they've chosen to threaten the world. And we've seen that's why there's been this large echo of countless Middle East countries that have come together to say that this cannot stand. The attack on Qatar and the United States with the Air Force Base just will not stand. We condemn it in the strongest terms. We have Israel's Prime Minister, his office, speaking with clarity on all of this, as well as the President of the United States and Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu working extraordinarily closely together and getting this ceasefire done. So we stand with Israel, we stand with our wonderful military, and kudos and thanks to those B-2 bombers. Think about this, flying from Missouri to Iran in 18 hours, then returning immediately, another 18-hour trip. We're talking about 36 hours plus change in a round trip that saved the world, literally. Because when they hit that first target with those Buster Bunker bombs that are nearly 30,000 pounds plus, I mean, these are heavy things that go deep, deep into the earth and knocked out these nuclear facilities. Tomahawk missiles were fired upon and followed. An amazing operation. And to think about those who cover the Pentagon on a regular basis, zero leaks taking place. In fact, decoys being flown the other direction to create what was unknown. The fact that B-2 bombers went into Iranian airspace undetected and then not only carried out their mission, completing it with a great success, wiping out what was there with the intended target, with zero casualties and not being fired upon, and then to leave Iranian airspace with being undetected, that's nothing short of a miracle. And I'm sure hits the psyche, as Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth put it, of the Iranian leadership. The fact that the United States can do that, this is the most powerful military that has ever existed, the most stealth, the most lethal. It's all because of meritocracy. It's because of the leadership of this president. It's because of the recruitment abilities of General Raisin Kane and Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth. It's putting men and women who care about this great country and defending it, willing to give up their lives, back into the forefront, not someone on a Navy vessel, a man dressing up like a woman back during the Autopen administration. And we see that clear leadership coming from 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue and from Arlington, Virginia, the location of the Pentagon. So kudos to President Trump, Vice President Vance, Secretary of State Marco Rubio on this trip with President Trump to the Netherlands, and also Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth. Well done, men. Well done. It's an incredible thing to look at and to cover, as this is a world that is volatile. This is a world being cleaned up by President Trump's leadership. And let's be honest, we got here because of Barack Hussein Obama and the Autopen, who ransomed the United States sovereignty and security with billions of dollars. The question is, why did they make those payments to Iran? They know their actions dating back to 1979 and what took place with the revolution. They knew what happened in the Carter administration, where our hostages, our American embassy, was under siege by revolutionaries. And for 444 days, until Ronald Reagan swore his oath upon that Bible, they were not released. And that's why I took to media and watching Argo over the weekend, remembering that great mission that brought together Hollywood producers and clandestine services from the CIA to free those 6 American operatives who were in the clutches of Iranian control over that period of time. The Canadian embassy and the Canadian government helping us to get them out. It's an amazing story. Bit of a slow movie, but worthwhile to watch, especially for those Americans, including me, who were not born at that time, just to get context of what's happening. Because you have someone like Thomas Massie, who clearly is voting with the other party nearly 100% of the time. He wants to bring a war powers resolution to the floor. And Mike Johnson, our great House Speaker, perhaps one of the best speakers who has ever served in the House, detailing this morning that what about Federalist number 70 and Alexander Hamilton? Very clear on Article 2 and the powers of the Commander-in-Chief and what the President has in civilian leadership over that of the military. And then there was some discussion, debate, if you're a constitutional scholar or, as Mike Johnson was, a constitutional attorney. And for politicos like me and nerds who enjoy this stuff, he went in depth about the War Powers Act from 1973 and whether or not it was necessary at the time. But as President Trump saying on Truth Social, third-rate Congressman Thomas Massie, the great Commonwealth of Kentucky, a phenomenal state that I won all 3 times by a lot, keeps talking about how he is going to protect the Constitution. But he is actually very bad for the Constitution and will probably vote against the great, big, beautiful bill that grants the biggest tax cuts in history, secures our southern border from criminal invasion, funds the Golden Dome, our great military and veterans, protects our Second Amendment, grants no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, and no tax on Social Security for our great seniors, and so much more. He is against all of the above and many other incredible things. Why would anyone want to vote for the so-called congressman, a rhino at best, that's Republican in name only, who wants to raise your taxes by 68%, which is what will happen if the great, big, beautiful bill does not pass. He votes no on everything because he thinks it makes him cool. But he's not cool. He's a loser. And I happen to agree with President Trump. And Congressman Massie, always invited on RSBN Live to answer these questions, why he feels that for some reason Section 1 or Article 1 of the Constitution, specifically with the Congress when it comes to wartime powers, somehow usurps the Article 2 of President Trump's wartime authorities. And also, based on that War Powers Act from 1973, again, a questionable passage of that during Vietnam, during the Nixon administration, as Mike Johnson put it, Congress has 48 hours from the president to receive that information on what the president conducted. Mike Johnson said 125 military operations have been conducted post-World War II, the last time we declared war on another nation, by the asking of the executive and the congressional approval. Now, President Trump and his team alerted Congress well within that 48 hours after the strike on Iran. In fact, it was relatively immediately, ensuring the safety and security of our military and no leaks, because we know that one party in Congress wants to leak everything. They have an allergic reaction to what anything President Trump does. In fact, as President Trump has joked on the campaign trail, if I really want something, I'll pretend to be on the other side, because then the Democrats will be for it, and then we'll get 100% support coming out of Congress and perhaps from the demon rat governors across this great nation of ours. Many of them who continue to be in violation of federal law, including Jelly Belly Pritzker and Newscomb in California, who who are harboring illegal aliens and who are begging law enforcement and Tom Homan, please come arrest me so I can have a spectacle. Please come arrest me because I want to be president. The founders warned us of these people who were vain and intolerant of the founding documents, and we're seeing it to this day with their quasi-socialist, progressive, globalist movement that is extraordinarily unpopular. And now that they can't win elections and appoint judicial nominees that legislate from the bench anymore, they have crybaby parties together, but we're here for it on the right side of history to give you everything in real time, whether it's the speeches, whether it's the press gaggles, press conferences, so you can make up your own mind about this as President Trump is en route to the Hague, Netherlands for the NATO summit, and on his schedule, many meetings and some lovely dining celebrations with the King and Queen of the Netherlands. It should be a star-studded event, and President Trump is not mincing words. He wants a strong security pact, but he also doesn't want us to pay more than our fair share in order to go to their roads and to support Europe. We don't have to do that. We're the United States of America. We are a sovereign nation. In fact, you're welcome, Europe. On 2 occasions, back-to-back world champs, the United States saved your entire continent. So you are welcome there. There is some breaking news, unfortunately, with France, and our prayers for everyone there, that at least 21 people were injured in Paris over the weekend, with authorities detaining a dozen suspects. Nearly 150 people were jabbed with syringes. That's kind of a nightmare fuel in my mind. I'm sure for many other people. This is during a street music festival in France, according to NBC News this morning. Authorities have arrested 12 suspects across France. Millions of people spilled out into the streets over the weekend to celebrate the annual Fête de la Musique in Paris. The capital authorities reported that there were 3 to 4 times as many people in public as normal. So we'll see what's unfolding with that. We know the French did have a problem with letting in radical Islamic terrorists over the course of the last decade or so. Many illegal immigrants there. We're not making that assumption, just telling you what has taken place here. And we'll stay on this story because that's just a horrible thing. Why would you do that to somebody? But we know that they've had situations with people running those over in cars. These been at music festivals, at beautiful lakeside or beachside resorts as well. So remain vigilant. Enjoy this summer. But just be on guard, follow the State Department, travel.state.gov for all of those warnings, especially if you are abroad, because we've seen this homegrown terror. We've seen retaliation taking place because our government's been on the right side of history. We have been, especially under President Trump and his leadership, and especially with this ongoing tension in the Middle East, stay aware of what's taking place. Now, we do have a couple of playback videos from the morning. If you have not seen President Trump leaving the White House, also the press gaggle above Air Force One, or not above Air Force One, above our friendly skies en route to The Hague in Netherlands. President Trump and Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, on board, touching on the different issues facing the United States. We also do have some playback by the ambassador to NATO, Matt Whitaker, the former Deputy Attorney General, doing an outstanding job in that role, and someone who's been extraordinary on constitutional law, an extraordinary loyal person to not only President Trump, but to our founding principles, and laying it out there for the demon rats who try to, again, throw spaghetti at the wall and accuse this president of somehow being lawless when we know many of them are. And again, they can go have their beautiful cry baby moments, because we here are on the right side of history. We are bringing you a live desk that brings you all of the speeches, all of the press conferences, everything in real time or recorded and played back for you so that you can enjoy that and make up your own mind. That's the goal here at Right Side Broadcasting Network. And Mr. Director, do we have any of those videos ready to play after we talk about our donating? If you do enjoy coming to this network, we appreciate your dollars to help us keep going as citizen journalists, anchors, hosts, and the great writing that you might have noticed even this morning on topics that affect you and people abroad. So support us here at Right Side Broadcasting Network by going to RSB Network. RSBN.com/donate or text RSBN to 855-575-7888. That is 855-575-7888. Call today. Don't delay, because after all, we live in the good old U.S. of A. And thank God for that. Support us here at Right Side Broadcasting Network, RSBNetwork.com/donate. Thank you for your financial support. If it's $2, $20, $200, $2,000, whatever it might be, it helps us to continue this mission of being on the correct side of history and showcasing everything your government's doing, the government you put into place back on November 5th of last year. And you did it in such a peaceful and patriotic way. The greatest political comeback, frankly, in American history. The MAGA movement, which united forces with MAHA and traditional Democrats, including Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the great secretary of HHS. And it's this big tent of republicanism now embracing really everyone, whether you are a CEO or a CFO at the top of the corporate ladder, or you're a welder or an electrician or a plumber, someone in a union who simply works hard day after day to put food on the table for your family. Those who might be in the private sector, who might be in the public sector. There is a home and a room for all of you in the MAGA movement, which looked at the neocon agenda and the neoliberal agenda and said, no, we're not doing this anymore. We're not going to just talk tough like President Clinton did, and George W. Bush and Barack Hussein Obama. And God knows the auto pen didn't know what he was talking about on a daily basis. But they all said that Iran should not have a nuclear weapon. Then they did not act on it. This president was consistent over the course of nearly 20 years, including dating back to January of 2011. He said Iran should not have a nuclear weapon, full stop. And he has been consistent on that, and the White House releasing those quotes with the exact dates over the course of the last number of years. And this president, given the green light by his top generals, and it was there for the taking, to save the world from nuclear catastrophe. And as President Trump put it, hey, Vladimir Putin, thanks for your help on Iran, but no thanks. Actually, let's fix your mess with Ukraine, and let's bring peace to the entire world. President Trump working overtime to fix the problems of the Auto Pen administration. And think about the Green New scam and all that ransom money going to Iran under Obama. And we know that Obama's team was really in charge during the Auto Pen. It's a scandal, and hopefully we'll find out exactly who signed or authorized those papers, because it's criminal what took place in the last administration. But we'll stay on it here at RSBN to find all of that information out for you. And again, so that you can make your minds up, you can make decisions for yourself and pay attention to the government that you put into place back in November. Now we are looking live there at the White House, those big new flagpoles that are quite beautiful, with President Trump en route to the Hague, Netherlands for the NATO summit to meet with the secretary of, or actually the ambassador to NATO, that is Mr. Matt Whitaker, the former Deputy Attorney General, doing an outstanding job there to serve the country. Also on the plane on Air Force One with the President, Secretary of State Marco Rubio. They are scheduled to have great dinner meetings and bilateral discussions with the King and Queen of the Netherlands. So some formal activity mixed with some traditional diplomacy as well. So we'll see what comes out of those NATO meetings and that summit, as we have some playback for you today on what took place this morning, taking place over the course of the last several hours with the conflict between Israel and Iran. We know the ceasefire was declared, but then Israel took more action. And President Trump said it could have potentially been expected. At the same time, it was necessary given the ceasefire. So he was quite upset about that, but pleased to know after that bombing that Israel brought back its plane. So this is a developing situation. We'll stay on it, watching Truth Social, watching President Trump's comments, and then also watching what is happening around the world right here for you, so you know how to protect your family in this very interesting time. I hope you're enjoying your summer, but again, remain vigilant, as we just had that attack in France at a music festival, several people being stabbed by syringes. That's just an awful thought. We don't exactly know who the perpetrator is at the moment, but we'll be watching for that to see if French authorities come to any conclusions on that. But wherever you go, if you're traveling abroad, travel.state.gov, or just watch your back in your own community, especially if you're in the big cities. Just remain a little bit extra vigilant as you enjoy summertime celebrations with friends, family, and loved ones. No need for mass hysteria. Just talking about that here because we see these things on a regular basis being in the news. And we want you to be safe and want you to enjoy your big, beautiful summer. Now, Mr. Director, do we have that press gaggle by chance? President Trump aboard Air Force One, in case the good viewers had missed that earlier. And we have some wait on that, but we'll be bringing you all of those videos so you can enjoy that as President Trump, roughly an hour or so from now, will be wheels down. And we are tracking President Trump's trip to The Hague, Netherlands, of course, to meet there with NATO, the summit, and also the royal court of the King and Queen, His and Her Majesty in the Netherlands. I've heard beautiful things about this great country and look forward to visiting it and seeing it myself, hopefully in the near future. But it's an extraordinary time for America, for the world. As President Trump put it on Truth Social, congratulations, world. We are safe and sound thanks to his actions. As he put on Truth Social, Iran has officially responded to obliteration of their nuclear facilities with a very weak response, which we expected and have been effectively countered. There have been 14 missiles fired. This was towards Qatar. 13 were knocked down and one was set free because it was headed in a non-threatening direction. I am pleased to report that no Americans were harmed. And hardly any damage was done. Most importantly, they've gotten it all out of their system. And there will hopefully be no further hate. I want to thank Iran for giving us early notice, which made it possible for no lives to be lost and nobody to be injured. Perhaps Iran can now proceed to peace and harmony in the region, and I will enthusiastically encourage Israel to do the same. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Donald J. Trump, President of the United States of America. So with that strike that Iran took against the Qatari Air Force Base, actually it's the United States Air Force Base that President Trump was at during his Gulf trip, along with Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, the Iranian government warned Qatar ahead of time. They've had a relationship lasting for legacies, for generations, specifically with Doha, the capital, and allowing the emir and his government to know. In turn, the emir immediately allowed President Trump to know what was coming. And thank you to the Qatari government for their partnership, their love and their friendship, and a gracious thank you not only from RSBN, but also from the United States government, Qatar, the UAE, and Saudi Arabia, all great partners with the United States and Israel as well. It's amazing to see all of the peace that's come from the Abraham Accords, or even dating back to the Carter administration when the Camp David Accords, really, in my opinion, the only success of the Carter administration between Israel and Egypt, brokering that very difficult peace. Because as we saw just yesterday, all of these Arab and Muslim countries coming together to condemn Iran's attack on Qatar and ultimately the United States, including the Palestinian Liberation Authority's leader, Mahmoud Abbas. That's an amazing development that he would even condemn Iran in those actions, because the Iran rebels, the Revolutionary Guard, their Republican Army, also the Hamas and Hezbollah, all have worked together with the Palestinians, that government, in order to harm the Jewish population in Israel and abroad with their terrorist actions. But we know that the Houthis ceased to continue their actions within the Persian Gulf and within the waters near and around the Middle East, thanks to Saudi Arabia and the United States military. And we'll soon have complete and total peace. And we do pray that Iran will finally realize that they are the great traders that they are, going all the way back to the Persian Empire and giving their oil reserves, and they can be paid for that in return. It's capitalism. How about we start practicing that instead of threatening people with nuclear missiles, and we can all live and coexist in this one big, beautiful planet of ours known as Earth. And that's why President Trump continues his visits, his diplomacy to The Hague in the Netherlands. And it should be an extraordinary trip, as he should be wheels down roughly within the hour. And we'll take you there live here at RSBN to monitor all of that. Meanwhile, House Speaker Mike Johnson having a great press conference this morning, showcasing why the one big beautiful bill is of the utmost importance to get passed for those working in the United States, especially in Southeast Louisiana. The Majority Leader Steve Scalise bringing his constituents as well, speaking in favor of that great one big beautiful bill. Also, I'm just going through here now looking for Federalist number 70. I've come to it, which was written Saturday, March 15th, 1788. This is where Alexander Hamilton describes Article 2. The Executive Department further considered, and that Mike Johnson, our House Speaker, went into this in depth today regarding President Trump and his wartime powers and what he can do, and how he was within the Wartime Act of 1973 during Vietnam and the Nixon administration. And it's detailed right here. Alexander Hamilton does not mince words. In fact, if you read Federalist number 70, in effect, it almost makes the War Powers Act invalid from 1973, because it's very clear here from March 15th of 1788 that the President of the United States has certain wartime powers. And Congressman Thomas Massey is 110% wrong on this. And for some reason, these Kentucky Republicans, whether it be Mitch McConnell or Rand Paul, and especially Thomas Massey, siding with Democrats and not working with their caucus in order to bring much needed prosperity to the American people. So we've reached out to his office, and we hope he does come on. Congressman Massey, you're always welcome here for an interview on Right Side Broadcasting Network Live to explain your bizarre take, because what it looks like to me is that you're just grandstanding and you're trying to, perhaps maybe get rid of your Trump derangement syndrome. But I hate the term rhino, Republican in name only, but you might as well run as a Democrat, because those values seem to stand close to you and your Democrat colleagues. You're always with them. You're with Hakeem Jeffries pretty much every step of the way. And I like an independent thinker in Congress. I've always admired that. But just where the hell do you stand on prosperity for the American people and on our founding documents found right here? We the people, Federalist number 70, pretty damn clear about Article 2 and the war powers that President Trump does have in every commander-in-chief and the civilian leadership in this great country. So you're welcome on anytime. We could talk about it, because it would be a fun discussion, I think, for our viewers, as it's 1:01 on the East Coast. Good afternoon to you wonderful patriots that are on the East Coast and in the Central Time Zone. Still a good morning to you in the Mountain Time and Golden Coast on the Pacific, from sea to shining sea. We will endure, we will champion this American movement, a golden era. America 250. As a programming note, Iowa. President Trump will be traveling to that great state to celebrate really the beginning of America 250, the Jubilee year, leading into 250 years of this constitutional republic. We honored in Washington, D.C., Flag Day on June 14th. The 250th birthday of the United States Army happened to coincide with President Trump's 79th birthday, but he downplayed that, swearing in the new cadets into the United States Army as they took an oath on Constitution Avenue. And we had cameras right there for you, yours truly there, to cover all of the action on that sweltering, humid day in Washington, D.C. But it was well worth it to see a big, beautiful military parade, a parade I've really, quite frankly, never seen. And I've loved 4th of July parades and being part of them over the course of my lifetime and my career, but this was the best. And to see, as we were standing right under there, you could get somewhat of a vantage point of Constitution Avenue right in between the White House and the Washington Monument. But to see those big, beautiful fireworks over the Washington Monument was something I'll never forget. And to honor this great country in such a way, thank God we have a president who really is the biggest fan of this culture, of this government, and is leading it with unmatched ability. And to do that at 79 years young, after what his family has been through, fake impeachments, the Russia hoax, and assassination attempts, he's almost gained energy from all of it. I know a lot of people that could not handle the pressure he's under, but he seems to thrive off of it, all to save the American people and the American way of life. And on top of it, he takes $1 per quarter, donating the rest of it to different charities that need it, and nonprofits, perhaps government buildings, and fixing the infrastructure of this country, and perhaps most famously in the first term, giving that money to Gettysburg, to the much needed hallowed grounds that needed to be restored. And thank God for that, because they are timeless places to go to. In fact, if you're going to Washington, D.C., make sure you go over the Potomac into Arlington to see Robert E. Lee's former property, now known as Arlington National Cemetery, and especially to the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, where President Trump, Vice President Vance, and Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth so honored that person and persons lying there in state with the beautiful wreath and all saluting that timeless attraction. It's a great place to go because there's so much noise in our life, so much noise in the culture. So to go there and stand there in quiet prayer and solemn reverence for those who gave their lives in the Great War, and also for those who continue to serve, always good to honor and remember that on a daily basis. And we are going to toss it now to President Trump. He is en route to The Hague, the Netherlands, and it's an extraordinary trip to the NATO summit to meet with royalty and those other countries throughout Europe. We'll toss it there live now.
Just show the plane landing.
President Trump has landed in The Hague, Netherlands for the NATO summit, and we are awaiting a nice view of the big, beautiful Air Force One. We love that plane, and we are excited to see what these meetings will entail and what will happen overseas. And it's probably the best timing for what's taken place over the course since Saturday, and President Trump really ending the 12-day war between Israel and Iran with those big, beautiful B-2 bombers and the Tomahawks that followed. You cannot match American firepower. So the world is on watch as we don't want to use it, but we are willing to in order to save and protect American interests. As Secretary of State Marco Rubio puts it, the White House just releasing more information on the one big beautiful bill, preventing the largest tax hike in American history and unleashing economic growth. The one big beautiful bill delivers for the American worker. The one big beautiful bill delivers the largest tax cut for working and middle class Americans in history. Simply put, President Trump's one big beautiful bill will unleash an economy and deliver a blue collar boom for American workers. It's fitting because I'm wearing my blue today. Bigger paychecks. Hardworking Americans and families will see an average increase in take-home pay of over $10,000 per year. Historic tax relief for workers, 15% tax cuts across the board for Americans earning between $30,000 to $80,000 per year. No taxes on overtime or tips. This saves overtime and tipped workers nearly $2,000 annually. Historic tax breaks for seniors introduces unprecedented financial relief for seniors. Made in America tax breaks, interest deduction for loans on new American-made vehicles, also a large standard deduction, keeping the double standard deduction used by 91% of taxpayers. This ensures that taxpayers keep more of their money with a simpler tax break, providing historic relief for working families across the board. This bolsters child tax credit, increases and makes permanent the child tax credit, supporting over 40 million families, supports working families, expanding child care access, and makes the paid leave tax credit permanent. This establishes Trump investment accounts for newborns, creating savings accounts to secure financial futures for every American child from birth. This improves housing affordability, expands low-income housing tax credit to incentivize the construction of affordable homes for American families. It also supports family farms and raises death tax exemption, increasing the amount of family farms that can inherit without paying taxes, protecting 2 million family farms from excessive taxation, also empowering school choices, enhancing 529 savings accounts to make education affordable and empower American families and students to choose the education that best fits their needs. This is all, meanwhile, how do you protect your savings, your retirement, everything you can do with your 401k and IRAs? It's Colonial Metals Group with 100% tax-free gold and silver, all brought to you by the good people at Colonial Metals Group. We have U.S. Attorney Judge Janine Pirro, a big fan of this group as we are here at the network. Scan the QR code now. Get your no obligation freegoldguide.com/RSBN to receive that free 2025 gold guide so you know what you can do for you and yours. You've worked hard, you've saved, now protect your retirement. And we know that the Chinese Communist Party wants an economic Pearl Harbor to hit the United States because we've weakened them ever since President Trump has come back into office. So the best course of action for you, gold and silver. We have crypto. It's exciting. A lot of that's going on right now. You have properties, you have these assets, a 401k and IRA. But sometimes it's backed by paper money, which we know becomes inflated. $36 trillion in debt as we stand in our great American nation. It's a travesty, mostly thanks to the auto pen, but regardless of who's in charge, protect yourself with gold and silver. Gold going up over 7,000% in value ever since the Nixon administration said no to the gold standard in turn for the petrodollar, and that was back in 1971. Gold does not go down, it goes up. And you can actually, right now, with any purchase from Colonial Metals Group at freegoldguide.com/RSBN, stand the chance to win $7,500 on the house of free silver. And $7,500 on the house is good as it is, but again, it's paper money. Is it really valuable at the end of the day? Gold and silver is. So go visit them today, freegoldguide.com/RSBN. Scan the QR code and heed the warning of people like Warren Buffett who know a thing or two about money. Thank you to All Family Pharmacy as well. allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. Use code RSBN20, 20% off now through June 30th. Scan the QR code there because there's a new COVID variant and you need the life-saving medication that actually can get the job done. We know what happened over the course of the last 5 years, but it's ivermectin, hydrochloroquine, methylene blue, mebendazole, NAD+, and over 200 essential medications, including antibiotics and emergency medical kits that you could keep in your medicine cabinet or you could take on the road with you during your summer vacations. They are saying, according to that Guinness Book of World Records, it might break this year with more Americans traveling than ever before, especially during the summer months. So why not stock up that medicine cabinet? All peace of mind. If you don't have insurance, there's no hassle because this group at allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN, they're 24/7 concierge doctors. They cut through the red tape and they want to be there for you because the pharmacy down the street might close if there's a massive storm, or Big Pharma might have them as puppets and then you can't get that life-saving medication that you're looking for. And talk about a conflict of interest. Sometimes the insurance companies, they own the pharmacies. So talk about double dipping. No need to worry with allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. Visit them today, a great sponsor here on the right side of history. And we are awaiting President Trump as he has touched down in the Hague, Netherlands to get a view of Air Force One. We'll bring that to you when that indeed happens, as we are breaking down the one big beautiful bill. President Trump putting it, no vacations until the Senate actually works on this. Let's get to work. Gosh, Congress might be the best gig ever. You just get to go home to your district because you have to campaign all the time. How about get to work on this one big beautiful bill, Senate, for the American people? This drives economic growth through America First tax policies, incentivizes made in America manufacturing, full expensing for new factories and improvements to unleash domestic production. It expands the opportunity zones, permanently renews program unlocking $100 billion in rural and distressed communities, also boosts American businesses. The bill delivers full 100% expensing for new factories, equipment, and machinery. This also puts Main Street over Wall Street, promotes growth, and helps small businesses keep more money by making permanent and enhancing the small business tax deduction, making it easier to grow and hire. This doubles small business expensing, raises the limit for small businesses to immediately deduct up to $2.5 million in equipment and property costs, helping them hire more workers and expand. President Trump's one big beautiful bill lowers tax rates to help keep more money in American pockets and prevents the largest tax cut in American history. So it's time for Congress to now get to that and get to work for prosperity for the American people. We know where Congressman Thomas Massie stands, and perhaps he'd like to come on the network and talk about it because it doesn't make sense why you would want to increase taxes on the American people. Now, 3 hours ago, President Trump saying on Truth Social, stupid AOC, that's Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, one of the dumbest people in Congress, is now calling for my impeachment, despite the fact that crooked and corrupt Democrats have already done so twice before. The reason for her rantings is all of the victories that the United States of America has had under the Trump administration. The Democrats aren't used to winning, and she can't stand the concept of our country being successful again. When we examine her test scores, we will find out that she is not qualified for office, but nevertheless far more qualified than Crockett, who is a seriously low-Q individual, or Ilhan Omar, who does nothing but complain about our country, yet the failed country that she comes from doesn't have a government. It's drenched in crime and poverty and is rated one of the worst in the world. This is Somalia, if not rated at all. How dare the mouse tells us how to run the United States of America. We're just now coming back from the radical left experiment that with Sleepy Joe and Kamala and the auto pen in charge. What a disaster it was. It truly was a disaster. AOC should be forced to take a cognitive test that I just completed at Walter Reed Medical Center as part of her physical. Now, as the doctor in charge said, President Trump aced it, meaning I got every answer right. Instead of her constant complaining, Alexandria should go back home to Queens, where I was also brought up, and straighten out her filthy, disgusting, crime-ridden streets in the district she so-called represents, and which she never goes to anymore. She better start worrying about her own primary before she thinks about beating our great Palestinian senator, crying Chuck Schumer, whose career is definitely on very thin ice. She and her Democrat friends have just hit the lowest poll numbers in congressional history. So go ahead and try impeaching me again. Make my day. That's probably the best truth I've ever seen. That was pretty fantastic from President Trump. And he continues to share countless things on True Social right now, including Crockett on Trump's Iran moves. I, the one who meant to make those effing decisions. So, again, we have a comedic troupe in the United States House of Representatives with people like Thomas Massie and Ilhan Omar within the same ilk as Crockett and AOC. What an all-star cast of losers. And it's actually frightening, as much as we can laugh about it, that these people want to be in control, because we know that they are puppets of those funding them, from radical movements in Somalia or Iran, all the way here to the home front of George Soros and his horrible son, who hate this country, yet they want to reap the benefits of all of it. And we know what's going on, because now more than ever we can share this information in such a fast moment, in such a fast time. And thank God for that, because then you know what's actually happening in your government in real time with these radicals who think they can do the job better than President Trump. But I have it open here to Federalist number 70. The executive department further considered by the writings of Alexander Hamilton on Saturday, March 15th of 1788, spelling it out clearly that President Trump was within his Article 2 authorities to do just what he did on Saturday night, early Sunday morning hours over Iran, authorizing that strike, the cleanest strike in history, and with no casualties on the American or Iranian sides, to knock out these nuclear facilities that threaten the world. And the radical theocratic monsters that run Iran can now finally rethink all of that and come to capitalism, come to freedom, come to being a good neighbor and not a bully like they were over the course of the last 40 or 50 years, threatening everyone in the region. And that's why you had an echo of Muslim countries and traditional enemies of Israel all coming together with the United States and Israel saying, condemning that strike from Iran to Qatar. There was a warning given to the emir, then the emir passed that on to the United States. And very grateful for him doing that to make sure that U.S. personnel at the Air Force Base were safe after that strike. And thank you to our sponsors here on the right side of history, angelpaste.com. Experience the miracle today. The Vitamin B Miracle Cream, non-GMO, no chemicals. You've seen me use it here on the network, and my skin was glowing as a result. They also have an orange option that is filled with vitamin C that is non-GMO, no chemicals, as well as a facial spray and a natural mosquito spray, something you can use now when going to those barbecues to celebrate summer, to celebrate the 4th of July, and spending time with your many loved ones. This is a great company to use year-round. They are Christian-owned, they love our veterans, and they hire military personnel in the Lone Star State of Texas and the Houston Metroplex, specifically in Spring, Texas, a lovely place to live in the United States of America. Experience the miracle today, angelpaste.com. We are awaiting President Trump to land in the Hague, Netherlands. And we'd like to thank kalshi.com/RSBN, where you can make those trades and those bets. You can see under my chin right there, scan the QR code. Go to kalshi.com/RSBN for all of the most important events facing this country, facing the world, and questions like, will this ceasefire stay intact? Will the Dodgers win the World Series again, go back-to-back in Los Angeles? So it's a whole host of different questions and issues facing the United States and the world. Trade now on the most important events, kalshi.com/RSBN. There's a live look on the tarmac of the Netherlands. President Trump and Secretary of State Marco Rubio will be meeting with Ambassador Whitaker, who is in the Netherlands representing the United States so handsomely. He was the former Deputy Attorney General, and you saw him with the crazy questions that came from the demon rats under congressional testimony, because they like to invent ideas and thoughts, but he sticks to the letter of the law, a constitutional expert in his own right from the great state of Iowa. And that's where we will be come Iowa, July 3rd, for President Trump's visit to celebrate the 4th of July and the 249th birthday of the United States of America. We look forward to that coverage next week as we are breaking down everything that's happened over the course of the last few hours, the last several days, and now President Trump's visit to the Netherlands for the NATO summit. And we see there what looks like to be his motorcade hitting the ground with the press pool cam, and Air Force One should be in sight relatively momentarily as they are on the ground in this beautiful royal nation. We know President Trump will be meeting with the King and the Queen, having some delightful dinner discussions, also bilateral meetings to discuss the state of NATO. And President Trump was very clear in the press gaggle on the way to the Netherlands early this morning that we want that strong security apparatus, but we're not going to pay more just to fund roads and to fund infrastructure for Europe. That's not the role of the United States. And again, you're welcome, and there are friends, most of Europe, but you're welcome for saving your continent on 2 occasions. Back-to-back World War champs. We're proud of that here on Right Side Broadcasting Network, and we seek, as the president does, to bring peaceful messages to the world, but also everything in real time. There's no rose-colored glasses here like Barack Hussein Obama wanted to use, as well as the auto pen, that they would talk tough on different issues like Iran, but then they'd give them ransom money out of nowhere and tell former President Dmitry Medvedev, a bird brain if there ever was one in Russia, that President Obama would have more flexibility after the 2012 election, caught on that hot mic. I'm sure you remember that golden moment. And then Dmitry Medvedev saying to then President Obama, I will transmit this information to Vladimir. Interesting, because I thought at that time, Medvedev, now the vice premier of national security for Russia, was the president. I thought he made the decisions, but apparently it is Vladimir Putin who's been really the puppet master and the controller of Russia since 1999-2000. So we see all of that, and President Trump being very forthright with the Russian leader that we don't need any advice or help on Iran. We need to fix your problem in Russia and Ukraine and can help you with that, but basically butt out of the business of saving the world, because we don't need you who started new wars and conflicts really think to the auto pen, because if President Trump was still in office, there would have never been a Russia-Ukraine conflict. There would not have been an October 7th attack on innocent people at a music festival in Israel, because we know that world leaders respect this president. They also fear him. And you need the combination of the two. You need an unpredictable nature. It's so important to do that in order to make America great again. And in case you missed it, we could toss it to the video this morning of President Trump being very forthright, and open, the most transparent president in American history in this 24/7, 365 news cycle. We could toss it to that now before we see his arrival in The Hague, Netherlands.
Hello, everybody. Hi, Jeff. How are you? How are you? We have breaking news. Everything good? Israel, as you know, turned back. They didn't do that raid this morning, fortunately. That was a big thing. Appreciate it. They had a lot of planes going, and they were going to do something, and they didn't do it. We're happy about that. Very happy about that. So the ceasefire is very much in effect, and I think we're going to keep it there for a long time.
Did you speak to Prime Minister Netanyahu about that?
I did.
What did you tell him?
I said, you got to turn back the planes. They were going to go because, look, they hit him very hard after we made the deal yesterday. They were entitled to, but nobody thought that would have happened. But they hit him very hard, and that shouldn't have happened. And then, as you know, Iran hit them very hard last night because of that. I don't think they would have, except for the first hard hit. And I guess a missile was launched a couple of minutes afterwards, which went nowhere, which hit nothing. And there was going to be a retaliation this morning by Israel. And they said, you got to call back the planes. It's enough. It's enough. And they did, which I respect very greatly. So nobody was killed. That was the sort. But they had a lot of planes going in the wrong direction. You know that, right?
Do you want any consequences for Israel or Iran for breaking?
They didn't do anything. No, they didn't do anything. They would have if I put out a statement on truth, and they didn't do anything.
Sir, how are you confident that this might not happen again? Say in a couple weeks that...
Tired of it. I think they don't want it to happen again. And Iran's not going to have a nuclear weapon, by the way. I think it's the last thing on their mind right now.
Mr. President, did Iran make any commitments yesterday about uranium enrichment?
About what?
About uranium enrichment.
They're not going to have enrichment, and they're not going to have a nuclear weapon, and they know that. They're going to get on to being a great trading nation. You know, they're very good traders. And they're going to be a great trading nation, and they have a lot of oil. They're going to do well. They're not going to have a nuclear weapon.
So did they
The
promise?
last thing on Iran's mind right now is nuclear weapons.
Can you clarify what you meant when you mentioned regime change in your Truth Social post the other night?
Which?
Regime change? Do you want to see regime change in Iran?
No. If there was, there was. But no, I don't want it. I'd like to see everything calm down as quickly as possible. Regime change takes chaos. And ideally, we don't want to see so much chaos. So we'll see how it does. You know, the Iranians are very good traders, very good business people, and they got a lot of oil. They should be fine. They should be able to rebuild and do a good job. They're never going to have nuclear, but other than that, they should do a great job, which is exactly where I've been saying for years. You cannot let Iran have a nuclear weapon. But we're going to be with, where's Marco? I think Marco's here someplace. You know, our great Secretary of State. But we cannot let them have a nuclear weapon. They won't have a nuclear weapon. And I will tell you, the last thing on their minds is nuclear weapons. They don't even want to think about nuclear. And our B-2 pilots made this all possible. They had a magnificent hit in the dark of night with no moon, no light, no nothing. They hit the target perfectly, wiped it out. And the press is very disrespectful. I saw CNN fake news going, well, maybe it wasn't a perfect hit, it was perfect. They said maybe it did destroy it. We agree, it did destroy it, but maybe it could have destroyed it more. No, it couldn't have destroyed it more. Everyone hit, and it's very disrespectful to those great geniuses and patriots that flew those planes through tremendous danger. So CNN and MSDNC are a disgrace. And so are the others. I mean, they're pretty much all a disgrace. But it's an amazing period of time. Now we're going to NATO, and we'll get a new set of problems. We'll solve a new set of problems.
Do you think you'll meet with Zelensky when you're there?
Yeah, probably. I'll see him. Yeah.
What would you say to him?
Say, how you doing? They're tough. He's in a tough situation. Should have never been there.
Sir, you said a couple days ago that you didn't think the U.S. should have to agree to the 5% increase in GDP on defense.
No.
Do you want to
I was the one that said that's what they should be paying, as you know. No, I should do something. And they're having a problem with Spain. There always a problem with Spain. Spain's not agreeing, which is very unfair to the rest of them,
So
frankly.
the U.S. won't be increasing our GDP to 5%.
We should pay what everyone else, they're in Europe, we're not. A lot of that money goes to rebuilding their bridges, their roads, so it can take heavy equipment. And, we don't have any roads in Europe. We don't have any bridges in Europe. So, no, it wouldn't be quite the same thing for us. But we're with them.
Are you still committed to Article 5 of NATO?
It depends on your definition. There's numerous definitions of Article 5. You know that, right? But I'm committed to being their friends. I've become friends with many of those leaders, and I'm committed to helping them.
What do you want the role of NATO to be going forward once these other countries are spending
I think
more?
by having a unified system, I think we're going to have stronger peace, better peace. And I think we have that. When I went to NATO, they were broke. When I first started this whole thing, it seems like a long time ago, 9 years, right? But they were broke. I knew it immediately. I said, you guys are broke. They weren't paying their dues. 7 of the 28 countries, at the time it was 28, were paying their dues, but they weren't paying very much. NATO was broke. Then I said, you're going to have to pay. And we did a whole thing, and now they're paying a lot. Then I said, you're going to have to lift it to 4% or 5%, and 5% is better. And I guess they're voting on that today, but they're going to be lifting it to 5%. That's good. It gives them much more power.
Mr. President, if there's language in the final summit declaration about aggression by Russia, would you be okay with that kind of language?
Well, I'll have to take a look at it, but I'd like to see a deal with Russia. As you know, Vladimir called me up. He said, "Can I help you with Iran?" I said, "No, I don't need help with Iran. I need help with you." And I hope we're going to be getting a deal done with Russia. It's a shame. 6,000 soldiers died last week. More, 6,500 soldiers died last week. Russia, Ukraine, a war that never would have happened if I was president. So enjoy your flight.
Can I ask you one more follow-up? In your comments just now about Article 5, that will probably make some people in Europe concerned. Can you clarify what you mean? Are you still committed to mutual defense?
I'm committed to saving lives. I'm committed to life and safety. And I'm going to give you an exact definition when I get there. I just don't want to do it on the back of an airplane. Okay?
And one other question on energy. What's your take on the oil price situation right now, and are you concerned?
Great. I love it. It dropped almost $10 yesterday. I put out a statement, get it down, because a lot of people aren't able to do things when the energy goes down. We're going to have a lot less conflict. So it came down, and our energy department's doing a great job. We're drilling like we've never drilled before. We're keeping it down. We're going to keep it down until all these wars are settled. Thank you very much, everybody. I'll see you.
Iranian sleeper cells in the United States.
Biden led a lot of supercells, and Biden was an incompetent president and had no idea what he was doing. He hardly ever signed a document. Other people signed documents for him with the auto pen. It was gross incompetence. And among everything else, he let a lot of supercells in, many from Iran. But hopefully we'll take care of them. What Biden did to this country should never be forgotten.
Sir,
Do you think you'll get the Nobel Peace Prize now, sir?
And that's the press gaggle. President Trump this morning aboard Air Force One, and we are awaiting his arrival to the Hague, Netherlands. And that is a live feed from the beginning of the NATO summit to touch on countless issues. And President Trump actually truthing out some details on what's taking place in regards to the mixes of things he has to now solve and the different problems he's addressing, as he put it, aboard Air Force One. In fact, the United States is almost $1 trillion. This is incredible. We'll be discussing this soon with members of NATO. So the United States far paying the most when it comes to the allies in this situation. So President Trump threatens to stop protecting the allies that don't commit to the spending that 5%. Spain threatens to derail the NATO summit by its resistance to President Trump's demand that allies boost their defense spending to 5% of GDP, risk disrupting a high-stakes NATO summit aimed at placating the United States president. So we'll see how this all develops here. The NATO chief proposes to raise spending to 3.5% and commit further 1.5 to wider security spending. Live there as we see Air Force One touching down in The Hague, Netherlands. And then Pedro Sanchez, the Spanish prime minister, warns new goal would be incompatible with the country's welfare state. So President Trump putting his money where his mouth is. They should be paying 5%, period. If we want to have the security pact, it makes sense. They just need to pay their fair share, especially with the United States funding the bulk of it for countless years now. But thank God President Trump is in office, and it's not Bill Clinton or George W. Bush or Barack Hussein Obama or the auto pen, because we know that they were economic, low energy weasels and would bend to the globalist agenda, Republican and Democrat alike, but not this president who's truly putting the United States first, and it's about damn time. We saw it in the first term. We're seeing it now and well into the second term. And it is a beautiful sight there. Air Force One, as it approaches its landing spot in The Hague, Netherlands, to be greeted at the NATO summit and to have these discussions, these bilateral meetings with the King and the Queen of Netherlands, but also with the NATO chief as well. So we're monitoring all of that for you in what's been a wild news cycle the last few days. President Trump ending the Israel-Iran 12 days war swiftly and strategically with the B-2 bombers and also those Tomahawk missiles ordered by President Trump and General Raisin Kane, Dan Kane, the Joint Chiefs of Staff Chairman, doing an extraordinary job. As President Trump puts it, he's not a TV general. He's one of those real generals at the Pentagon, protecting the American people and doing what's best and going through countless congressional hearings, even dating back to the sending of troops with the National Guard to Los Angeles, getting a string of ridiculous questioning with him and Secretary Hegseth having to go through the nonsense and the lies of demon rat leadership. As we look live there now, President Trump arriving in The Hague, Netherlands via Air Force One. And we know that Secretary of State Marco Rubio is on board with him. They will rendezvous with United States Ambassador to NATO Matt Whitaker, who served valiantly in many different roles, but especially as Deputy Attorney General in the first term and as Acting Attorney General for a short period of time under President Trump. Another person who's gone through countless congressional hearings and fake questioning by a party that sadly now hates the country, all led by that Palestinian senator, crying Chuck Schumer of New York. But we will watch live now as President Trump will exit Air Force One for the Netherlands for meetings with not only this beautiful country, but the NATO summit. It comes at really a perfect time to solve even more problems. This president working around the clock in order to make America great again. And it's an exciting time to be covering all of this here for you on Right Side Broadcasting Network Live. You remember us as the Rally Network. We are this live desk, if you're just tuning in now, at 1:40 Eastern, and that is roughly 10:40 on the West Coast. I'm going to check the time in the Netherlands to give you an exact timing for what is taking place there as the sun sets on a beautiful country. But President Trump, I'm sure, looking forward to solving these problems, as he put it during the press gaggle this morning. And the current time there in the Netherlands, it is 7:41 p.m. As President Trump left early this morning. In that box right there, you see those other leaders arriving, and that is Prime Minister Mark Carney with his lovely wife of Canada, who was just with President Trump recently hosting in Alberta the G7 summit. And great deals getting done there within 24 hours. President Trump was supposed to stay longer for that, but was summoned back to the White House in due time for national security issues taking place in regards to Iran, and ultimately what we saw with that situation there with the execution of the B-2 bombers and also the Tomahawk missiles that were taking place over the course of the last few hours. And President Trump there live now in the Netherlands as we watch different world leaders coming to the NATO summit and the opening ceremonies of what's sure to be a frank discussion. President Trump wants 5% GDP across the board for all nations, and even dividing up of the GDP for security purposes. And some have really complained about those issues there. But let's look live there now as we expect President Trump to be exiting the Air Force One momentarily. President Trump arriving in The Hague, Netherlands. It's the capital of South Holland, the province there where the NATO summit is underway. Also the capital of the country, Amsterdam, one of the oldest constitutional monarchies and in the entire world, so entire Western world, and a great location for what's sure to be very frank discussions on this matching of the GDP at 5%. Spain is not in favor of it and has been very vocal about that, saying that its social system, which is very high in welfare, cannot afford it, quite frankly. And President Trump is moving to get all of NATO to be on the same page, to pay their fair share, and it makes sense. He's done it before. So as he said on the plane, I'm coming to solve more problems, just like we solved with Iran and other situations. And now he is in the beast en route to where they are meeting on this evening. It's getting close to the 8 o'clock hour in the Netherlands time. So President Trump now en route to that evening meeting and the greeting ceremony of many who are walking in. We saw Prime Minister Starmer of the UK, also Chancellor Merz of Germany, and the good honorable Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney, and his wife entering in these meetings as well. So they were just before President Trump, and we'll see if we get any footage of any other world leaders who are coming in. I also think Mr. Zelensky of the Ukraine was solo entering that meeting tonight before he went to Air Force One. And the live shot of the motorcade there, it's quite an experience to be part of all that. And the press is towards the back there in those big mobile vans there. So they are en route now to the location for the NATO summit, and we'll see what transcribes and it's discussed over the course of the next several hours, with President Trump doing a quick trip to NATO. Now, this is a quick trip as well by plane, 6 hours, 20 minutes. President Trump landing at 7:36 p.m. in the Netherlands time and taking off early this morning from Joint Base Andrews outside of Washington, D.C. in Maryland. And it's a good sight to see. I love when the sunset hits Air Force One. It's a beautiful sight to see American foreign policy power in real time. As stateside here, President Trump urging those to, in the Senate, pass that big, beautiful bill that is being discussed on a regular basis. And we got from the White House just this afternoon. The One Big Beautiful Bill delivers for the American worker. The One Big Beautiful Bill delivers the largest tax cut for working and middle class Americans in history. Put simply, President Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill will unleash economy and deliver a blue-collar boom. Truly an economy for the middle class. Bigger paychecks. Hard-working Americans and families will see an average increase of $10,000 per year. Also, historic tax relief for workers. 15% tax cuts for Americans earning between $30,000 to $80,000 per year. No taxes on overtime or tips, saving overtime and tipped workers nearly $2,000 annually. Historic tax breaks for seniors. Introduces unprecedented financial relief for seniors. Made in America tax breaks, interest deductions for loans on new American-made vehicles, and large standard deduction, keeping the double standard deduction used by 91% of taxpayers, ensuring that taxpayers keep more of their money with a simpler tax break. This also provides historic relief for working families, bolstering the child tax credit, increasing and makes permanent the child tax credit, supporting over 40 million American families. Also supports working families by expanding child care access and makes the paid leave tax credit permanent, establishing Trump investment accounts for newborns, creates savings accounts to secure financial futures for every American child from birth. Also approving housing affordability, expanding the low-income housing tax credit to incentivize the construction of affordable homes for American families. Also supporting family farms, raising death tax exemption, increasing the amount of family farms that can inherit without paying taxes, protecting 2 million family farms from excessive taxation. And I mean, think about that for a moment. You want to pass it down to your family, and they know the ropes, they know how to farm, and you have to pay tax on that. Just rather insane when it's your own property. Empowering school choices, enhancing 529 savings accounts to make education affordable, and empowering American families and students to choose the education that best fits their needs. Driving economic growth through America First tax policies, incentivizing Made in America manufacturing and factories with improvements to unleash domestic production. This also expands opportunity zones, permanently renews programs unlocking $100 billion plus for rural and distressed communities. This boosts American businesses, and the bill delivers full 100% expensing for new factories, equipment, and machinery. This puts Main Street over Wall Street, promoting growth, helping small businesses keep more money by making permanent and enhancing the small business tax deduction, making it easier to grow and hire, and in turn really helping countless businesses to get off of on the right track. Now this doubles the small business expensing as well, raises the limit for small businesses to immediately deduct up to $2.5 million in equipment and property costs, helping them hire more workers and expand. President Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill lowers tax rates to keep more money in American pockets, preventing the largest tax hike in American history. So all of that happening stateside as President Trump visits The Hague, Netherlands for the NATO summit. What he has here on the schedule is really a busy number of hours here, as he will be greeted by the King and Queen of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, also participating in a family photo that will be all of the members of NATO, and a social dinner which is expected to begin at 8:30 in the Netherlands. So that will be about 2:30 here. So 30 minutes from now, as it's 2 o'clock on the East Coast and 11 a.m. on the West Coast. Good afternoon, good morning. I'm Robert McNeely. If you've just tuned in now, you're at RSBN Live Desk for President Trump's visit to the NATO summit in The Hague, Netherlands. He was greeted off the plane by his national security team, including Ambassador Matthew Whitaker from the United States to the Netherlands, doing an extraordinary job. He was once the acting Attorney General and Deputy Attorney General of the United States in the first term under President Trump. And that social dinner will include everyone apparently from the NATO summit, the NATO members, and that will be taking place in roughly 30 minutes from now. So we look forward to everything that will take place there. Now tomorrow, President Trump participates in a photo opportunity with the King and Queen of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, also participating in a breakfast with the King and Queen. And then he will be at roughly 10 o'clock Netherlands time, participating in an official greeting and poolside with the NATO Secretary General. So discussing more of the business at hand. Another NATO family photo anticipated tomorrow. And President Trump will be participating in a North Atlantic Council plenary session and bilateral meetings to follow that. Then the president, we can expect tomorrow afternoon, will be in a press conference with the NATO discussions taking place. And then President Trump in the afternoon and the morning for us will be departing for the White House back tomorrow, and should be arriving at the White House, the scheduled time, 10 minutes to 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern tomorrow. President Trump will be returning to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. So a quick whirlwind trip to the Netherlands and to meet with NATO members and to solve, I'm sure, countless problems. President Trump is the best at doing that, though. We've seen that on a number of occasions now, including the G7 meeting That recently took place in Alberta, Canada, and was cut short by the United States. It continued to go on there with other members, but as Prime Minister Carney mentioned, he understands why President Trump had to leave that, dealing with the situation between Israel and Iran, the 12-day war that's now come to an end thanks to President Trump and our brave military and generals from the Pentagon. And now that is Turkey that is arriving there, President Erdogan, and I'm sure some other leaders, including his wife as well. See him getting out of the car there. Yes, President and Mrs. Erdogan arriving at the NATO summit. And this is a country that's been really in the middle of all dealings with Iran and is not necessarily always on the side of the United States. But regardless of that, we've kept a good bilateral relationship discussions and also have military bases in the Turkish nation. So this is the meeting of a number of different minds and those who are attempting to keep the region safe. Originally, NATO was established post-World War II and post into the Cold War, given the threat of Russia at the time with its Soviet advances. Now, there's been a question, is it obsolete? Is it really serving its purpose? Is it going against some of those agreements that were made during the Clinton administration in regards to going up against that western border with Russia? Now, with new member states coming in, including Sweden and Finland, that would be technically in direct violation of what was agreed to during those Clinton years. But thank God we have President Trump in office, who is the deal maker in chief, who is really the peacemaker in chief at the end of the day, because his voice is the strongest and the loudest in the room. Remember his first NATO summit meeting when he walked up and he gently moved the world leader out of the way because he is the leader of the free world. He should be in the front row, and he is not afraid to call a spade a spade. And he called them out on their funding and their budgets. That the United States took the bulk of the spending and the payments for NATO. We were basically keeping it afloat by ourselves. And then President Trump came into office and demanded that equal spending. And now he wants 5% of everyone's GDP to go to that spending for this security apparatus. It only seems fair, but there will be some voices, including Spain, who do not want to proceed with that. But we know that it's very hard to be in the room as a world leader when President Trump is there and as your opponent or your competitor. Because even if you get along with him, we saw it in the Oval Office with roughly 15 different meetings over the course of him taking the oath of office on January 20th with world leaders in the White House. And 3 stand out to me because the others, it's always good to have the bilateral discussions with the Irish Prime Minister, of course, the Taoiseach, who was visiting in March for the traditional St. Patrick's ceremonies. That was all good and dandy, and everything was very warm, and the exchange of gifts, and that was good, and that's needed as well. But President Trump, what stands out is meeting with Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney, although warm. Remember the back and forth, Mr. President, we will not be giving up Canada. It's not becoming the 51st state. And then President Trump, with his signature, tilted the head and the eyebrows and said, we'll see, Mark. We'll see what happens there. And I enjoyed that moment immensely. And then, of course, you can't go wrong with the Zelensky in Ukraine coming in there trying to act like a bully and trying to take the talking points of the globalists and the demon rats. And he thought he was going to bully the vice president and the secretary of state and the president of the United States in the Oval Office. And President Trump said, okay, it's over. Come back when you actually want to have a discussion and when you actually want to have peace. But kindly leave the White House. You're wasting our time. And he also had that tough discussion with the South African president when he came to visit. He moved the video monitors in the room showing a socialist party that did not have just 1 or 2 people, but soccer stadiums full of those calling for the death to the white farmers in South Africa, which in turn, over 75% of the farmers there are of Caucasian descent. And you saw these black socialists who were attacking their fellow countrymen. How could you have a situation like that? President Trump called it out along with Retief Goosen and Ernie Els, the famous pro golfers who are enjoying the dual citizenship between South Africa and the United States. And that's what President Trump does the best. He can bring culture, he can bring sports, and different items in there, including those two gentlemen who called out the South African president, saying they want their country to return to what it once was, a beautiful beacon of hope for countless people, regardless of backgrounds and descent. And we don't want apartheid 2.0 to take place, which seems to be happening over there. So President Trump is unafraid to call a spade, and that's why his foreign policy is truly the best of peace through strength, of just telling it as it is. And it takes having those hard discussions with counterparts and world leaders who want to shy away from that. And now you're seeing a live look of the Netherlands. Also, the NATO summit is taking place, awaiting President Trump's arrival for this 8:30 dinner at their time. That will be 2:30 on the East Coast. And we should be expecting a State Department press hearing and press briefing with Tammy Bruce, the great press secretary under Secretary of State Marco Rubio. And Mr. Rubio is on the trip with President Trump, as well as Ambassador Matthew Whitaker, who greeted President Trump off of Air Force One. So we look forward to bringing you there to both live shots once those feeds come in to get any developing information on the 12-day war, as President Trump put it, between Israel and Iran. That's now in a ceasefire. Also, all of the developments live there from The Hague, Netherlands, where the NATO summit is taking place, where President Trump will enjoy this social dinner and the NATO family photo, and also many meetings, a breakfast meeting, in fact, as well, with President and the Queen of Netherlands. So a beautiful country and a great host to the NATO countries who are revisiting really this alliance and where it stands and where it should continue to stand in wake of 2025. Is it obsolete? Is it needed? Is it something that will help in regards to dealing with Russia come the future? We've seen as President Putin has not liked this organization for a number of reasons, because post-Soviet era, to call a spade like we do here on RSBN Live Desk, some leaders who ran NATO have not really followed through on their promises. So there are promises made but not kept, and you can see why someone like President Putin, someone who we do not endorse, I do not endorse, I think he's been really a terrible leader in so many ways, totalitarian in many regards, locking up political prisoners and also invading a sovereign nation, Ukraine. Regardless of that, we can see where he's been concerned about the expansion of NATO with Sweden and Finland, which was once promised that would not take place, because if you go back to the Clinton years, it was agreed to that if Ukraine would get rid of its nuclear weapons, that the United States would then be there to help defend their sovereignty, but in turn, no encroachment on that western border of Russia and the eastern border of those Baltic and the Polish state, and also the Ukrainian state. So some of these countries being former USSR members. But we see now, years and years later, new leadership, new discussions, and sometimes promises broken. And that's why having someone like a peacemaker in chief is so crucial. It's not really an ideological question. It's more of peace through strength, and does it fit the America First agenda? That's what President Trump is focused on. It's what Secretary of State Marco Rubio is focused on. And sadly, as President Trump pointed out, and he used some foul language, I believe it was appropriate, leaving the White House, just how ticked off he was with what was taking place after promises were broken. And then you have an American media in the likes of the Clinton News Network and MSDNC, as well as other legacy media outlets that call it journalism, but give you their opinion and then say things like, it actually wasn't the strike that was anticipated. Things went wrong. We can't really know if it worked, after it did, because in turn, when they do things like that and make up just their own agenda and set of the narrative, it ends up harming our military. And I even think back on this too. There was a report that the B-2s left Missouri, and it was well before the strike even took place. So that's why they had to have the countermeasures of sending other planes out west in order to make a diversion. Sad to think that the American media is actually working against our military, seeking to protect us. Amazing. And this is as President Emmanuel Macron of France and Mrs. Macron arrive at the NATO summit in the Netherlands to a beautiful red carpet, very European. It's almost as if we're watching the Oscars, but more entertaining than the Oscars, in my opinion. And we're grateful for you and the viewership here at the Right Side Broadcasting Network live desk in The Hague, Netherlands, for the NATO summit at 2:13 Eastern. It's 8:13 in the Netherlands right now as we await President Trump to arrive at this very important dinner, because what we've seen in the last few hours is how fragile national and international security is. And the peacemaker in chief himself, someone unafraid to use American might and military prowess, President Trump, is the man for the mission, the man for the job. And thank God he came down that golden escalator over a decade ago now with our beautiful First Lady, Melania Trump, in order to make America great again. We're also awaiting Tammy Bruce and a press hearing directly from the State Department in Washington, D.C. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, her boss, is with President Trump, his boss. So we are excited to see the developments from NATO specifically, and also any other briefings regarding what's taking place in Iran, the Middle East, also with Israel in the middle of the crosshairs. But what a relief it was to see just yesterday all of the commentary coming from the Muslim world, the Arab nations, that said unequivocally that Iran was out of line firing missiles at Qatar, and specifically at the U.S. Air Force Base that President Trump and Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth were at just weeks prior for the Gulf state meetings that brought in $6 trillion for the United States. So we don't want that to happen. And the biggest surprise, I understood Saudi Arabia was fantastic condemning those attacks, but I was very surprised to see Palestinian leader Mahmoud Abbas saying no, the Iranians were out of line, because the Iranians have funded the Palestinians for years against their attacks, their anti-Semitic attacks around the world and in Israel. Also funding those Houthi rebels who stopped their piracy thanks to Saudi Arabia and the United States on the high seas and in the Persian Gulf. There's also Hamas, who started off the terrible terrorist attacks of October 7th, 2023, and Hezbollah in Lebanon, who continued that attack on the north against the Israeli people and the Jewish state. So it's good to see that the Muslim world and the Arab world seemingly united against Iran, the bully of the Middle East. And we pray now that the people of Iran, nearly 92 million of them, who we love, who we care for, the Persian Empire that once was an incredible culture, now taken over by theocratic monsters, it will be up to those in the millennial and Gen Z generations, and perhaps older, to change their government. It's up to them if they want to do that. And God be with them in that process, because the Shia militant theocratic monsters that run Iran, the Ayatollahs, Khamenei, and also the mullahs, they have a very narrow focus in the world. It's either convert to Shia Islam or die. There's no in between. And we've seen this in the way they've carried out attacks in the form of terrorism over the course of 40 to 50 years. And I'm not usually one to recommend movies or film, but there is some great media out there, and sometimes Hollywood gets it right, either telling a story of history like Argo, that tells that story from the Iranian Revolution back in 1979, when 6 diplomats were freed and got out of Iran just in time. And thanks to the Canadian Embassy and their ambassador at the time, and thanks to the Carter administration, who really fumbled the football on countless occasions, but in some areas got it right. History gives you that perspective. But for 444 days until President Reagan's inauguration on January 20th of 1981, you had American embassy officials who were in captivity by Iranian revolutionaries, and they've been causing trouble ever since. These Iranian Revolutionary Guards, the Republican Army, and really a dark society that once was a flourishing Persian culture. We hope that that can come into growth again, but we cannot do it through nation building. And President Trump has been very clear on that, while at the same time the Iranians should never ever be able to hold that nuke. And his living predecessors always said the same thing, but they never took action because they were weak leaders. And I'll call them out as I do almost every day: Bill Clinton, George W. Bush, Barack Hussein Obama, and the auto pen. President Donald Trump is the antithesis to your lawlessness, to your failed leadership, and ultimately the peacemaker. And if he has to use the military to do it, he will. But he won't nation build and line the globalist pockets like you gentlemen, and I use that term very loosely, did when you were president of the United States. A title which none of you should have had, a title which put the United States in turn in danger. And we just call it out on the right side of history here. Like we see it, we are hosts, we are commentators, anchors, and journalists who have a background in all of this, who have watched this closely for countless years. But we also have commentary, and we break it down for you, the American people. Let's go there live to the State Department to see Tammy Bruce and any updates that she has from Washington, D.C.
Thank you for coming. Appreciate you being here. I'll get mad at Fox when they try to come in here late. All right, you guys. Of course, a few comments here as we begin on this Tuesday. The past few days have proven that President Trump means what he says. America can be proud that we have a president who puts America first and is a peacemaker. As he said on his Truth Social, both Israel and Iran wanted to stop the war equally. It was my great honor to destroy all nuclear facilities and capability and then stop the war. Now, an update on the State Department's 24/7 efforts to assist U.S. citizens throughout the Middle East. The department has provided information and support to over 27,000 people seeking guidance regarding the conflict between Israel and Iran. The vast majority of people we are in touch with are seeking information, which we provide regularly. The State Department began assisted departure flights from Israel on June 21st. Flights have departed Israel with hundreds of U.S. citizens and lawful permanent residents and their accompanying immediate family members. We are grateful to our partners in the region and around the world for welcoming American citizens. We also extend our deep appreciation for the government of Qatar's cooperation in the defense of the Udeid Air Base, as well as our deep appreciation for the the Al Udeid Air Base, as well as the deep appreciation for the American men and women in uniform who are there and for the vital role they continue to play for U.S. and regional security. Yesterday, Iran launched several missiles against AUAB. Many of those missiles were successfully intercepted due to the combined efforts of the U.S. and Qatari armed forces. Thankfully, no Americans or Qataris were hurt. In further announcements today, Secretary Rubio has landed along with the president at the NATO summit at The Hague. As the secretary has noted, under President Trump's decisive leadership, we're driving historic change at NATO. Also this week, the United States will participate in the 55th Organization of American States General Assembly in Antigua and Barbuda, where we will engage with regional partners to advance our shared goals to make for a safer, stronger, and more prosperous hemisphere. Deputy Secretary of State Christopher Landau will lead the U.S. delegation, reinforcing our commitment to supporting Rosa Maria Paya's candidacy to the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights, addressing the crisis in Haiti, and countering the influence of the Chinese Communist Party in the Western Hemisphere. In addition, today, the Department of State's Rewards for Justice program announced a reward of up to $5 million for information leading to the location, recovery, and safe return of Mahmoud Shah Habibi. Mr. Habibi was abducted and detained by the Taliban's General Directorate of Intelligence on August 10, 2022. He has not been heard from since that time, and the so-called Taliban government has not yet provided any information about Mr. Habibi's whereabouts or condition. We encourage anyone with information on Mr. Habibi to contact +1 202 702 7843. That is +1 202 702 7843 via Signal, Telegram, or WhatsApp, or go to rewardsforjustice.net. That again is an up to a $5 million reward for Mahmoud Shah Habibi for his safe return. And again, that is rewardsforjustice.net.
Sorry, Kevin, he's in
Excuse me. Excuse me, Matt, please. I'm more of an announcement here. To conclude today, the United States condemns the brutal and cowardly attack on the Mar Elias Greek Orthodox Church and offers its condolences to the victims and their families. We call on the Syrian government to hold all perpetrators of violence accountable and ensure the security of all Syrians, including members of religious and ethnic minorities. As Ambassador Barak has said, the United States continues to support the Syrian government as it fights against forces seeking to create instability and fear in their country and in the broader region. And now I will take your questions. Daphne, please.
Thank you.
Sure.
Just on Israel-Iran, Trump has said that he was unhappy with both sides for breaching the ceasefire deal, but particularly frustrated with Israel. Does the State Department have concerns about whether this truce will hold, and what conversations is Secretary Rubio having today with counterparts about this deal?
Yes, as I noted in my announcement, and actually what, of course, we always appreciate about President Trump is you never really have to guess at what he's thinking, which is appreciated. One of the most transparent men we've known. Americans in the world have watched all of this unfold, I think, in a very clear way, and certainly with the leader of the free world, of the world, really, essentially, in Donald Trump, making it clear his opinion. And this is what also, I think, keeps things moving. With any ceasefire dynamic, it's fragile. And in the meantime, of course, things did come together, and there has been quiet in that region. He did make clear his feelings about that. But as I mentioned in the opening, that he said, just a couple of hours ago, both Israel and Iran wanted to stop the war equally. It was my great honor to destroy all nuclear facilities and capability and then stop the war. So obviously, the president has believed from the beginning that diplomacy can stop wars, that it is the thing that we should rely on. He leaned into that, and it's continuing to work. This is a dynamic now that is in play. And is, I think, steady, as he has, I believe, also recognized based on his comments.
And then on his
Yes.
comments about China being able to continue to purchase oil from Iran, how did this come together? Was this part of the Israel-Iran ceasefire deal? And what does that look like going forward? Will sanctions that have been imposed be lifted? Will there be waivers? How does that look?
Those are all very good questions. Yes, and it's obviously a very fast-moving, we've used the word fluid here many, many times, a very fast-moving environment. The president has signaled what he expects, what he is looking forward to. This is a cabinet and a government that acts to the nature of what he says and what he wants. And in this case, of course, I'm not going to discuss what that process will be, the nature of any of the applications via the various departments in this government. But clearly, we are focused on making sure that that guiding hand of President Trump prevails and moves this government forward. So we will have to wait and see when it comes to what that ends up looking like. All right. Yes, Andrea.
Well, just to follow up,
Yes.
does that mean, just to translate, are we lifting sanctions? Has anything happened to make that possible?
I'm not going to get ahead of the president or try to guess at what his strategy will be, but it will be one that will benefit this country, and that, again, he's very clear. I think the difference is, obviously, sometimes you don't hear ahead of time about the trajectory of a president. With President Trump, he speaks honestly with us. So I would suggest to not translate, to not speculate or guess. but to watch because things happen quickly, and I think we'll find out sooner than later. Yes, ma'am. One more.
Quick follow-up on something. You quoted the president as saying it was my great honor to destroy all nuclear facilities to stop the war. As far as we know, the bomb damage assessment has not been done. The Joint Chiefs Chairman was talking about how long it might take. Do we have something more conclusive about destroying all of the nuclear facilities?
Well, a conclusive comment for me would be coming from the President of the United States. I have great admiration for you, Andrea Mitchell, but I think he might know more than you do at this point, more than I, more than any one of us here. At the same time, obviously, the information that we receive, that the American people receive, which will be public, will take some time. But President Trump has indicated his pleasure at the success of that raid, which obviously was very limited in scope. And that's a very good point, I think, at when it comes to the nature of what's occurred, and I'm pleased that the president is pleased. Sean Tandon.
Sure. Could I pursue that? I mean, another comment from the president this morning, he was saying that basically stop the bombs was the message that he sent to the Israelis. Does he believe that the Israelis complied with this? Is he happy with how it turned out?
Well, I think that there's early on, and again, I'm here at the State Department. I know my colleague Caroline is very articulate and clear on the nature of the president whom she represents and the State Department at the White House. But I think when we clearly look at the nature of how the day has transpired, there was some activity back and forth, and that has stopped, and the ceasefire has taken effect, and the president is pleased. So I think we can take that as an indicator of his feeling about it at this point.
Sure.
One more.
Sure, and I mean, they're both statements both from Tehran and from Jerusalem and
Yes.
Tel Aviv today. But I mean, one of the things that from the Israeli military chief was saying that this is just a phase, and they reserve the right to go back in. I mean, do you think that's consistent with the call for a ceasefire in terms of the Israeli statements on this?
Well, I think the statements that we've looked at that we care about are the fact that both, certainly Israel has agreed to the ceasefire. And we believe there's a statement from Iran that has done so as well. So those are the statements that we care about. All right. Yes, sir, in the back. Right there, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Tammy. Obviously, pretty epic diplomatic developments last night.
Yes.
Can you walk us through any of the diplomatic steps that were taken that led to the ceasefire, and specifically Secretary Rubio's role? What are some of the ongoing efforts to make sure the ceasefire sticks? And then a separate but related question. The President spoke this morning about the great trading potential with Iran. Does this administration envision a broader rapprochement with Tehran that could lead to diplomatic ties being established, even the embassy being reopened?
Well, on both those issues, I can't speak directly to them, but I can say a few things in that certainly I wasn't there. The Secretary of State was in a dynamic with the President that is a private dynamic as that team was addressing a war and the nature of how to stop it. So I can't speak to how that transpired or the decisions that were made, but obviously a successful evening, successful aftermath when it comes also to a very quick ceasefire. In the meantime, for your other question, which was, remind me again your second question?
Well, President Trump this morning spoke a little bit about the potential for trade with Iran.
Oh, the trade question.
I was asking more about the
yes,
potential
obviously,
rapprochement.
again, while I can't speak obviously to the choices President Trump will make, what we do all know is that he is a businessman. Americans appreciate that about him, the nature of how he looks at the issue of national security and safety. And he has in the past addressed the issue of relationships with this country, keep other nations secure, that we are a good friend to have, that a friendship with the United States assists and helps facilitate the natural national security of another nation. So I look at that in his approach in certain things, and that's been certainly his attitude about it, and it seems to be a correct one. It's one I agree with. So I think we'll see that if that in fact is the case here, and we'll find out. All right. Yes, ma'am.
Thanks, Tammy. Is there any sort of monitoring mechanism for the ceasefire if it continues to hold? Will there be a third party that is making sure that both sides are adhering to this ceasefire?
Well, as the State Department, I can't really speak to that. I think that's a DOD question and certainly a White House question.
And then how do you view the next steps for nuclear talks potentially resuming in light of this ceasefire? Is there anything on the schedule any follow-on conversations between the two sides to try to resume the talks that had been
Well,
scheduled?
I can't speak to a schedule. I'm not going to guess or speculate about when something might happen. What we do know, and President Trump throughout this process had been tweeting about the fact that this would be a good time for negotiations to renew, for these talks to renew. Of course, with some disappointment that it got to this point. He has been committed to diplomacy and to discussions. Obviously, he's displayed that for these last 5 months, I would think that has not changed. So the commitment, not just from President Trump, but also from Secretary Rubio, to minimize the need and go out of your way for the need to not engage militarily is clearly a hallmark for him and his view of national security and foreign policy, as it is for Secretary Rubio. And I would expect that approach and that commitment to remain the same.
Impeachment?
Yes, go ahead.
Thanks, Tammy. Just to follow on that, over the weekend, the president, many other cabinet members, they said that the strikes by the U.S. military on Iranian facilities had obliterated the nuclear program. Because of that, do you see that as buying more time for these negotiations to play out? Has the urgency at all changed? And there are reports that Qatar has tried to mediate nuclear talks, try to restart those. Are you receptive of Qatari efforts at this point?
Well, that's not something I can address in any detail at all. I do know that the president was very confident in his assertion of the destruction of those sites. That was necessary because of the point that he's had from the start of this, which is that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. That has been a very singular, clear point, and the understanding is now they're not going to have one. And that clearly might open the door for the people involved in those kinds of decisions about how to move forward. But that was, and the strikes indicated that. It was a very distinctive, limited strike regarding the issue that was in the forefront of the president's mind, that he made clear over and over again, that they will not have a nuclear weapon. And now they will not have a nuclear weapon. How we move forward from here is up to the President of the United States. Saeed, yes, sir.
Thank you. Now that we have the ceasefire between Iran and Israel seems to be holding, are we likely to see renewed efforts to have a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas in Gaza? I mean, just for figures, Tammy, maybe 400 people got killed in the exchanges between Israel and Iran. In the same period, like 700 Palestinians have died, many of them at the aid distribution center.
Yeah, this is why, and we are reminded about why the ceasefire efforts are important. It is a reminder about why the president, and why we're lucky for President Trump to be our president and for Secretary Rubio to be focusing on changing the status quo on this planet and changing the old dynamic of wanting new ideas. It has been his hallmark from the start, and that has not changed. What we can say, and just as a reminder, Saeed, there is a deal on the table. Hamas must stop acting recklessly and accept it. As Special Envoy Witkoff has said, Hamas's recent response to the offer was totally unacceptable and only takes us backward. It hasn't been that long, right? A lot of stuff is happening in a short period of time. But the fact of the matter is that we've never stopped working for a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip. We've never stopped wanting that to end, to get us out of that repetition of something that has certainly made the first victims, the people of the Gaza Strip, and then everyone else. It's a reflection of what needs to end and what has been the problem. President Trump has made clear to, in this case, Hamas specifically, that they will face consequences if they continue to hold hostages, which they do, including those who have already passed away and those who are still living. Hamas has rejected repeated ceasefire proposals and therefore bears sole responsibility for how this is continuing. Saeed, if you have a chance, I don't know if you do in your work, to pose the same question to Hamas. It would be, I hope you might be asking them.
I'll do it through my articles. I have no direct communication.
All right. Yes, sir, there in the middle here. Yep.
Thank you very much. President Trump has long said that Iran should not have nuclear weapons.
That is correct.
That is clear. Do you think it is important for Iran to change its foreign policy because the U.S. always says it is the biggest state sponsor of terrorism and destabilizing region.
I obviously can't speak to what's in the mind of the so-called leadership of Iran. I do know that the future of Iran is in the hands of the Iranian people. And whether or not certain individuals change their approach or belief, I think what has happened, the whole world has noted that the world has changed and that nothing will be the same. And how that plays out, we are very lucky that we have President Donald Trump, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and a cabinet that is united in the nature of what we're trying to do for the next 3.5 years. One more, yes, sir.
One more. And
please.
Kurdistan regional government leadership and strongly welcome President.
Mr. President, please, one picture.
The board. We're very lucky, as we've seen also with Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth. We are very early in this administration. Think about it. We are in the middle of June, and we've seen the results now of men and women who are focused. So we'll see for the Kurds and others as well. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Tammy. 2 questions for you. Number one, especially considering the Secretary is now at NATO.
Yes.
Does the Secretary feel like European allies had America's back to the extent that they should in this Iranian operation? I'm not talking about militarily, but from a general support standpoint, beyond just platitudes of concern about the Iranian nuclear program, do you feel like you got backing from Europe on this?
Well, I'm not going to comment or speculate on the feelings or assessments of our partners in any kind of dynamic. That's between them. It's about the leaders of the world. Right now, what I can tell you is that President Trump and Secretary Rubio are right there in The Hague at NATO for conversations with our partners throughout Europe. And I think that everyone expects that to be very successful. It's going to be a very exciting time. It's a perfect time for those conversations to be had. I'm not going to speculate on the nature of those any conversations or can speculate on the feelings of people either.
Second question for you.
Yes, sir.
In terms of regime change in Iran, the initial message coming out of the administration was, we're not after regime change, we're after the nuclear weapons program. Then the president remarked today, regime change is not a good idea because of the chaos that it would cause. So what is the administration, specifically the State Department's message here to Iranians who are suffering under the oppression of the regime? How do they move forward does America have their back, considering the president said regime change is not a good idea right now?
Well, again, that's in the perspective certainly of the president and what his actions, he feels what actions are important, what our intentions were. It was very clear from the start, from the very beginning. For years, the president has spoken about the problem of Iran and how they can't have a nuclear weapon. This is not a new idea, and it's certainly a globally held idea. But we've said here at the State Department repeatedly in a number of different dynamics that the fates of countries belong in the hands of the people in those countries. That is the overriding general message of the Marco Rubio State Department. It is the kind of thing that when we think about, not just democracy, but the nature of the decision of citizens to decide what kind of leadership they want. That is what our position is for certainly Iran and every other country on this planet. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Thank you, Tammy. 2 questions, one on Iran. Have you received any signals or message from Iran that they are willing to come back to the table? This first. And secondly, are you still sticking with the proposal that you sent to Iran, or you are open to discuss more broadly?
Well, again, as we know, many things have changed in just the last few days. And so I won't speak to what messages may have been sent to Iran, which would have been, of course, to the White House and to if Secretary Rubio as the National Security Advisor. So I would ask you to check with the White House for that. And the next one, yes.
Yeah, on your opening remarks, you said that the United States is ready to help the Syrian government to fight against forces seeking to create instability. Would you elaborate that? What kind of support are you willing to offer to the Syrian interim government? Are you willing to help them or provide them military support?
Well, I think already we know, of course, of the assignment as a special envoy of Ambassador Tom Barrack has been a very clear indicator of our commitment to helping Syria be able to be a functional and steady and stable government. He, of course, is the ambassador to Turkey, and our commitment through his work is about getting the structure, the stability of the government as functional. We also, of course, as you know, have lifted many of the sanctions to make it possible for other nations in that region to assist the new government also in becoming stronger and able to, in that region especially, deal with terrorist groups, especially deal with ISIS, and that is our commitment. So it is, I think, manifesting now very clearly, and Ambassador Barrack is there as our envoy in that regard, and it's a very exciting time with a lot of potential. Yes, sir. Yeah, yes, sir. In the gray suit there. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Tammy. You've been in the negotiations process with the Iranians for almost the last 2 months at the State Department. And the Iranian foreign minister just last Friday, he said that they suspect that the negotiations with the U.S. Used as a cover for the Israeli attack. And a day after that came the U.S. raid on Iranian nuclear establishment there and the buildings. Are you able to restore the trust between you and Iran? And how do you see these claims from the Iranian side?
Well, that's certainly a question that I can't answer, but we've got the best people in the world who are doing this for a living, who have committed their lives to making a difference here in the world. The president has not indicated that, as a matter of fact, he really opened his presidency with a willingness to talk with everyone. And as a peacemaker, that is what he's done, and I would suspect that that approach will continue. All right? Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Thank you, Tom. Do you think that there is any lesson for North Korea to learn from the U.S. strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities, given that North Korea has been doubling down on its nuclear program, despite the Trump administration's commitment to the complete denuclearization of North Korea?
Well, again, the nature of the choices that are made, I won't speculate about what other countries should think or do. At the same time, President Trump, in his first term, made a significant outreach to North Korea. And what I can say, of course, and they've got their own nuclear program at North Korea, that we remain committed to the complete denuclearization of North Korea. That remains a commitment. If the North Korean nuclear issue can't be resolved through dialogue, I'm not going to speculate on hypotheticals at this point, but thank you very much. All right, yes, there you are. Hello.
Just on the follow-up on North Korea, has there been significant outreach from the State Department to the North Koreans?
I'm not going to speak to any, whether they exist or not, any diplomatic efforts outside. All right, all right. And yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Tammy. I just wondered whether you have any further information on reports of a drone attack that happened to multiple Iraqi military sites early this morning, local time, Tuesday, whether you know at all whether Iran was behind those drone attacks at all?
I would suggest that the DoD might be the place that it might have an answer to that. Anything else? All right. Daphne? You're good? All right. And then, yes, go ahead, sir, at the end.
About the material that was removed from those nuclear sites. There are satellite pictures of trucks lined out.
Oh, nothing. I can tell you nothing. Just saving some time here. Yeah, I'm not going to speculate or discuss what may or may not have been removed from a particular site.
Well, then can you tell us, based on what you do know, I mean, how many years?
I can talk about the English royal family. I love them. Yes,
How many years would this have knocked back the nuclear program? And could that have been avoided if the U.S. had remained in the JCPOA?
When it comes to what's happened with Iran, we can look back several decades about the nature of the choices that certain administrations made that helped facilitate the nature of the building of that program. Donald Trump inherited a world, he'd left a world that was at peace, and he inherited one that was tipping over. And so his commitment, and what we look at here right now, is recognizing the status of things and what needs to be done to fix them. And that's what we're focused on. All right. And Matt Lee, I have a feeling you might have a question. I vaguely
Well,
remember
I did,
that.
but now it turns out that the
You have a
question
different
was
one.
already- I answered, so I do have a different one.
Okay,
But
good.
all I was trying to find out was whether you didn't mention that this Mr. Habibi was an American, which it turns out that he is. But has he been wrongfully determined to be wrongfully detained? Is that something
We have determined that he has been disappeared and that he has not been heard from. And that is why there's the rewards for justice, is that he was taken and he has not been heard from since.
Okay.
And we are hoping that this appeal may bring forward with up to $5 million. It makes a difference in everyone's lives.
it does.
That we might get some information about him.
Okay, then just the other thing was you had been asked earlier and yesterday, I think, about this money that is apparently going to go to fund the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. Have
Yes.
you been able to uncover anything about that?
Well, here's what has always been the case with the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. I now know that I think it's close to 44 million meals that have been distributed, which is a pretty darn good record, and they continue now at 4 sites to distribute them. We have repeatedly noted that we have not funded this entity, but it is, I believe, really the response of the call from President Trump for that region and that area in particular, that we've got to have new ideas about how to change the nature of what's occurring. The region has stepped up, other nations have stepped up, agreeing that the situation in Gaza has to be dealt with differently. We have to refuse to let it continue. And while we have a humanitarian crisis manifesting, is to do our best in an area that a terrorist group refuses to cooperate, ignores ceasefires, continues to hold hostages, and refuses to put down their weapons, that we are committed to endorsing, helping, promoting efforts to make a difference. When it comes to how that will manifest for the GHF, I can't say right now. But again, it's nice to know that 44 million meals have been distributed. That, like everything else for the last few days in the Middle East, everything has changed. How that manifests in the Gaza Strip is yet to be determined, but I'm sure we have another briefing on Thursday, and who knows, we'll have something new at that point as well. All right, yes, go ahead. And this will be it,
Tammy,
yes.
this weekend, Keith Kellogg went to Belarus and it secured the release of 14 political
Yes.
prisoners. Do you have any more details on those efforts? And did the Lukashenko regime get anything for releasing these prisoners, sanctions relief?
I do have a few
or
things I can
anything
say
like
to you
that?
about that. And this is the condition of our world. This is a huge story, and it really is, comes up later, but it tells you the nature of what's transpiring. While in Minsk, the U.S. delegation led by General Keith Kellogg, Special Presidential Envoy for Ukraine, met with the leader of Belarus and his team. Special Envoy Kellogg discussed the Russia-Ukraine war and how President Trump is pushing hard to stop that war and end the killing. And Deputy Special Envoy John Cole led the discussions on U.S.-Belarus bilateral relations, which resulted in the release of 14 long-held political prisoners from Estonia, Japan, Latvia, Poland, Sweden, and Belarus. And that is the result of what you can do with diplomacy, with envoys, and with a commitment to peace and freedom for people around the world. And we are blessed to have President Trump as our president, the wisdom of the American people, and of course, Marco Rubio is our Secretary of State. We are 5 months in or so to this administration, and it's an honor to be here. Thank you, everyone. I'll see you on Thursday.
Impeachment?
Thank you.
Thank you to Tammy Bruce of the State Department, a great press secretary, perhaps the GOAT of all State Department press secretaries, laying down the letter of the law. And to echo her congratulations to President Trump, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, 5 or so months into this administration, it's really incredible what's unfolding, fixing the problems of prior administrations, including AutoPen, that left such a mess for them. But we're grateful for our sponsors here at Right Side Broadcasting Network Live, mypillow.com/RSBN. Gotta love Mike Lindell, the master marketer, with his exclusive special. He said he can't even believe that he said it's a $39.98 value, nearly a $40 value, free with any purchase. With God, all things are possible. The multi-use MyPillow 2.0 Call today, don't delay, 800-836-7566, 800-836-7566. Support Mike Lindell and RSBN by shopping at mypillow.com/RSBN. And thank you as well to Trump Plane through My Patriot Addict Deals, a great place to go to, patriotaddictdeals.com. The Trump Force One airplane, 20% off right now with RSBN 20 at checkout. That's code RSBN 20. Get your limited edition Trump Force One airplane. I have one of these bad boys, and they are fantastic, and they will tell everyone who visits you in your MAGA office just where you stand on the right side of history. And these go fast. So when I got mine, it took 3 or 4 or so months to get back on the market. There's only 100 of them, so I'd get mine today. patriotaddictdeals.com. The Trump Force One airplane that took President Trump safely to and from everywhere on the campaign trails back in 2016, 2024. Of course, he had Air Force One back in 2020, which he just used now to visit The Hague in the Netherlands as that dinner is underway with His Majesty and Her Majesty of the Netherlands, as well as other NATO members. President Trump visiting. We'll have full coverage of that as it's getting near to the 3 o'clock hour at the White House, high noon on the West Coast, and about 9 o'clock in the evening in the Netherlands. Thank you for tuning in to Right Side Broadcasting Network Live, as our thoughts and prayers are with those who are martyrs in the Greek Orthodox Church. They were murdered, 22 people enjoying Sunday Mass when terrorists attacked them in Syria, and you heard from Tammy Bruce at the State Department that it is condemned in the strongest of terms. Pray for our Christian populations in the Middle East, especially as they've been targeted by countless governments in the area, and especially the terrorists. This situation now, God willing, coming to an end thanks to President Trump's leadership as the peacemaker in chief. We'll watch all of this as we'll have all of the breaking news for you and more scheduled programming all week. So stick with us here at RSBN as we are your go-to live desk. And also make sure to go to rsbnetwork.com/newsletter if you'd like to read the written word and what's produced here at the network, not just the broadcast, but also going in depth on countless topics, including Sunday devotionals at rsbnetwork.com/newsletter. All America First updates and exclusive offers for you. And if you wish to donate, rsbnetwork.com/donate, your go-to for citizen journalism and all of what's going on inside and outside of the Beltway for you. rsbnetwork.com/donate. Text RSBN, or actually call the new number, 855-575-7888. That is 855-575-7888. rsbnetwork.com/donate. We appreciate you supporting us here at the network to get everything to you. The government you put into place back on November 5th of last year, your 47th president, your 50th vice president, and the 119th Congress. Hey, Senate, let's have a big, beautiful bill on the president's desk by the 4th of July, ideally before he takes his trip to celebrate America's birthday in Iowa, which we'll have for you here at the network, just as we did Flag Day in Washington, D.C., on June 14th to celebrate the Army's 250th anniversary and birthday. This is all culminating into a golden jubilee year for the United States government, our constitutional republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. America 250. It's going to be quite a celebration leading up to what is still, very young compared to some of these countries, including the Netherlands, where President Trump is meeting right now. But our founders had this vision to put together a government, a constitutional republic that recognized that rights come from God, inherently from the Lord and from our Creator, and that a government for, of, and by the people truly should not perish from the earth, but rather work together, that all are created equal as one. And we seek to preserve that here at the network, and we seek to bring you those real stories, whether they be inside or outside of the Beltway, that make a difference for you on a daily basis. So if you want to write in, please feel free to, with the good, the bad, and the ugly as well. feedback at rsbn.tv. That's feedback at rsbn.tv. If you wish to opine, we'd love to hear from you. And we'd love for all of those America First updates to come into your inbox instead of just watching us here. We love you watching us here, but rsbnetwork.com/newsletter, a great way to get all of the America First updates and exclusive offers pertaining to your government. And also good if you're available Thursday nights. We'd love to have you, as we've started a new show now with yours truly, The Voice of Reason, where we go in depth on a bunch of different topics facing the United States, facing the world. And we like to have a comedic flair with it, also diving into some serious things and monologues and interviews that you won't get anywhere else, including even on our live desk. So feel free to tune in every Thursday evening at 6 o'clock p.m. Eastern for all of the interesting content that will be coming to you right here from Right Side Broadcasting Network Live. And President Trump is in the Netherlands right now and is scheduled to meet with the King and Queen of the Netherlands, also enjoying a dinner on this fine Tuesday evening. It's about 9 o'clock there during the Netherlands time, and they are right behind there in that palace. And it looks like as if they're getting together for the big family NATO photo, and some of those people in there have been at odds with President Trump and vice versa, and rightfully so, because President Trump is trying to save America and save the world, and some of them don't have the best interests of the United States. And as Secretary of State Marco Rubio has put it clearly, that we will push America first priorities and an agenda that protects the American people. If it does not have the interests of the United States, then it's not worth pursuing. This is not the neocon, neoliberal agendas of Bill Clinton and George W. Bush and Barack Hussein Obama and the autopen who would rather take a nap in Delaware and eat an ice cream cone. We know that this president is non-stop. So this is an exciting time for America. It's a golden era. Even with dangerous and scary times in the Middle East, we still have great leadership and a president focused on putting America first. As we see there live, it looks like the pool camera is getting through there. There's President Trump dead center. The King and Queen of the Netherlands. He's shaking hands with President Erdogan of Turkey, surrounded by other world leaders as well, looking dashing and dapper as ever. Our 45th and 47th Commander-in-Chief, the Peacemaker-in-Chief, and Emmanuel Macron next to the Queen of the Netherlands there, the President of France. And towards the back there we have Mr. Carney of Canada and a few other leaders we recognize here as well. We'll go there live now to enjoy that.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thanks. Can you take all your stuff? Thank you.
And we saw Giorgia Meloni there as well from Italy, a beautiful nation. And it looks like Zelensky owns a suit, for one of our friends from the media that we really adore here at the network, asking that question in the Oval Office a few months ago. It looks like he finally is wearing a suit for the occasion. So good to see that. Maybe he's graduated from college or whatever. I mean, Zelensky, he is what he is, but we want peace in the Ukraine. We want peace in Russia. We want peace in the Middle East. We want peace in the world, and we want a golden era, not only for America, but for this big, beautiful planet Earth that we happen to share. And President Trump working overtime in order to make that happen as he visits the Hague, Netherlands for the NATO summit. You saw them walking back into the palace there, and he has the ear of their marvelous, beautiful, fantastic queen. And we will see all of the meetings over the next 24 hours here as President Trump makes a quick trip to the Netherlands at the NATO summit. Thank you to our sponsors on the right side of history, Colonial Metals Group. We know that China wants an economic Pearl Harbor to hit the United States, so scan that QR code now or go to freegoldguide.com/RSBN to receive your free 2025 gold guide on the house. U.S. Attorney Judge Jeanine Pirro loves this organization, and we do too, because they truly are the best in the business. If you protect your IRA and 401k with gold, 100% tax-free, you will see your savings in retirement flourish. There's no question about that. You might have properties, assets, even crypto that you're storing up in order to watch out for those economic free falls that could happen, regardless of who's in charge. But truly the only way to do that, the best way, it's with gold and silver. And if you now order anything with the free no obligation gold guide at freegoldguide.com/RSBN or by scanning that QR code there now, you will stand a chance to receive $7,500 worth of free silver on the house. $7,500 in and of itself, very nice, but paper money, hey, inflation, it could make it worthless in the long run, but silver, wow, that will stand the test of time. Same with gold, going up over 7,000% in wealth and value since 1971. When the Nixon administration went off of the gold standard. So freegoldguide.com/RSBN, your go-to for gold and silver and protecting your savings, retirement, IRAs, and 401ks, Colonial Metals Group. Once you have that all settled, make sure that your cabinet is stocked. Your medicine cabinet. Very important to do with all the storms. We are in hurricane season right now, and look what's going on around the world. It's President Trump, thank God he's in office to end the 12 days war, but you never know what might pop up in your summer vacation and travels. So go to allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. There is a new COVID variant out there, and some pharmacies don't want you to have the medications that can save you in that moment. Ivermectin, hydrochloroquine, methylene blue, Mebendazole, NAD+, and over 200 essential medications, including antibiotics and emergency medical kits that are easy to take with you on your trip or just store again in your home medicine cabinet. Scan the QR code now, allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. Code RSBN20 for 20% off of your order. Now through June 30th, your go-to, allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. Thank you for your sponsorship on the right side of history. And thank you for tuning into all of this great coverage today. President Trump overseas for the NATO summit in the Netherlands. He will be returning tomorrow as well. If there's any breaking news or anything else happening in what's been a string of days and hours of breaking news, we're right here for you at the network. For all of my colleagues at RSBN, have a lovely afternoon. God bless you. Stay safe out there, and we'll see you soon.
Welcome to Right Side Broadcasting Network, your trusted conservative news outlet. At RSBN, we deliver the truth when the mainstream media falls short. Since 2015, we've proudly broadcasted every single one of President Trump's iconic MAGA rallies, bringing you the excitement and energy live before anyone else. By watching RSBN, you get an unfiltered front row view of the action on the ground. We interview the crowds to give a voice to millions of Americans just like you. We show you President Trump's speeches in their entirety, free from interruptions and censorship. We cover the stories that matter to you with the integrity and passion you deserve. Thank you for choosing RSBN as your home for America First News. Together, we stand strong, united, and informed. So join us and be part of the right side of history.
Hey y'all, it's Silk from the Diamond and Silk Chit Chat Live Show. Look, don't forget to check me out right here on RSBN Network. Be sure to watch the show on Right Side Broadcasting Network, and I want you to support Right Side Broadcasting Network. Yes, it's imperative that you do so, okay? I look to see y'all soon. Bye-bye.
To celebrate our newest launch, Rev 7, I'm bringing you an amazing introductory offer, plus an exclusive overstock sale that you're not going to want to miss. Rev 7 is our premium energy drink that tastes great and gives you energy all day with no jitters and no crashes. That's because there's no sugar and no caffeine. I'm so sure you're going to love Rev 7 that for a limited time you can try our 3-pack absolutely free. Or check out our Percale bed sheets. I can't believe I'm even going to say this. Every color, every style, every size, only $29.88. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save 20% on our Rev 7 12-packs or try our introductory 3-pack absolutely free. And our Percale bed sheets, all sizes only $29.88, even the queens and kings. Inventory is extremely limited, so order now.